Today on the Commentator podcast, we are joined by Joseph Lenard. He is the author of
Ah,
Terror Strikes, Coming Soon to a City Near You, and How to Write a Book and Get It Published. He's a former information technology professional, and he now does political conservative commentary and blogs and writes and all this type of thing from the great state of Michigan. So, welcome, Joseph, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
thank you. Sorry to do this, but an immediate correction. It
Yeah.
looks French. It's not. It's not Leonard. It's Leonard without an O. And it's Joseph M. Leonard because that's my author. Well, that's my legal name and my author name that I use because there is a Joseph Lenard out of South Carolina. So I, need to
No, I'm
make
glad we
that
got
distinction. Yeah.
No, I'm glad we got it cleared up, but that's a perfect transition right into why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your work and what you're talking about these days?
Yeah. Yeah. Born and raised in Southeast Michigan area, and I choose to stay here even though I'm not fond of Michigan winters. I'd love to live in like Vegas, but I stay in Michigan.
Yes.
And I'm on disability. I was an IT guy. I got massive burnout, constant calls all through the evening. The body didn't get proper sleep. And at
Yes.
some point, my body said to me, okay, you're not going to slow down. We're going to slow you down. Like it or
Yes.
not, bam, shut down, immune system.
Yes,
So,
yes,
so I'm on disability, which is, I wrote and recorded. I come from a musical family, Ted Leonard Jr. and the Polka Kings. You can still find their albums today. But I didn't want to go into polka music, but I did write and record music for a while. Never got a record deal. So I'm continuing kind of the family writing legacy through
yes.
books now and do online articles. I host my own Christitutionalist Politics podcast show. I'm also AKA Jokester Joe and Raging Joe on Savaged Unfiltered podcast. So that's, and as far as the Jokester Joe, my specialty is lame, bad, stupid, loose wordplay, like your show, the Cameron Journal. It's like for me, you're going to be the Camera On Journal.
That's very clever.
No, it's
Yes.
pretty lame, actually. It might be a little clever, but it's definitely lame.
That will sadly not have been the worst thing that's been said about me or the show.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book to start? We'll start with that. Why don't you tell us a little about your book?
Yeah, I've been writing my whole life. As I said, wrote and recorded music, wrote stories, short stories, novels, poems, whatnot, my whole life, since my young ages. But I only now available have 5 international books. The first internationally available book is Terror Strikes, Coming Soon to a City Near You. And that subtitle is, of course, very important because there are a million different. You could see me groping back here for something, and it'll make sense why in a minute because I didn't memorize this. But Terror Strikes Coming Soon to City Near You was my first internationally available books, and shout out to people in Australia. For some reason, my book does really well through Booktopia in Australia. But it's not a book about death. Yes, about terrorism, but not book about death, but life and living. And yeah, I'm reading this because I can never memorize it.
No, it's okay.
Life over death, hope over fear, faith over despair, love over hate, good over evil, individualism over collectivism, freedom over tyranny, family and friends. So yeah, terrorism, it's really about Martin, who is a journalist who's going to write a book about terrorism. Hence, that's the thread that holds all those sub-themes together.
No,
really
no.
more about life than death and destruction. And then my
Yes.
second book, I was on lots of shows, like yours for Terror Strikes. And they say, well, just come back and talk about writing and publishing. And I said, sure. So there's a million books on how to get your book on Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, you could read the Amazon help files for that. You don't need to pay anybody for that. So I figured there's a market for how to write a book and get it published, hints, tips, and techniques that take you from concept to writing and publishing. What are your realistic options? After you've published, you're not done. Then comes promotion and marketing and all that stuff. So there was a book for that. And indeed, several people are using my book now for their book that will be out later this year or next year. And a few people already in the past have done that. My third international was Christitutionalist Politics, based on my podcast. Then I wrote Podcasting Quick Start Guide, because a lot of people would like to do a podcast. And I tell you, hey, you could do it from your living room like I am right here. See my ugly couch back there behind my green screen, just doing it from my living room. And then Christitutionalist Politics 2 came out again further in my podcast. At any rate, that's probably TMI for most people. They didn't want to know all that.
No, it gives us a great context of who you are and your politics and your view and all this type of thing. So
yeah, but the real reason I'm here, of course, is as a former IT guy to talk AI.
Yes, well, and we should turn our attention to that. So why don't we get it? So let me set the scene for everybody, because we're recording this on the 30th of May, 2025. This will not come out for a while yet, but this morning on Twitter, the shit has hit the proverbial fan when it comes to job losses from AI, and everyone's kind of got their hair on fire a little bit today. So it's kind of apropos that we're recording this now. So people are starting to realize software companies have slowed down or quit hiring, especially for junior roles. They're predicting 50% of entry-level jobs are going to disappear, which, as someone who went through the great financial crisis, I know how devastating that can be for young people trying to get a career off the ground. You have senior devs that are trying to make AI a version of themselves and clone themselves. There's a lot happening right now. There's a lot of predictions saying by the end of this decade, 50% of white collar work will no longer exist. So there's a lot of dialogue happening right now. And then, everyone's saying, okay, well, I guess we'll all, be in the trades and everything. And then someone says, not with Elon's new humanoid robots that are already working in Amazon factories and all this type of thing. That may get a 5-year extension because working in the physical world is very difficult, but it won't be too much longer before a lot of those jobs go away as well. So what have we learned from all of this? This is no longer theoretical. It's here. And
right.
so...
And we briefly discussed this. I co-host of Savaged Unfiltered, as I mentioned. You were a guest on Savaged Unfiltered, and we touched on a little of this there. So this is almost a follow-up episode.
Yes. I actually kind of forgot that, and I thought I recognized you, and I didn't know from where. So thank you. And so, so that's very, very good. So then we should then kind of turn our attention to, you're talking about AI, copyright, law, all this type of thing, which is all getting very muddy. And some people say, well, we should just get rid of copyright in general. And I'm kind of like, well, that's a nice idea if you don't produce anything intellectual, sort of thing. For the rest of us that do that, and that's our business, this is an existential threat sort of thing. So understanding that things with AI are getting very real right now. And in January in my 2025 trends report, I said this is the year the AI rubber hits the road. If they can figure out how to solve business problems and create business cases, then AI will move forward. Otherwise, it probably won't. It looks like they're solving the problem and AI is moving forward. So that's the scene, that's the milieu and zeitgeist we're in. where are you with all of this? What's the
Yeah.
latest problem with AI besides taking all of our jobs that we must worry about?
Yeah, from the writing and research and thesis papers, our kids in school aspect of it.
Yeah.
Indeed, I wrote at beforeitsnews.com and theliberty.beacon.com a piece, AI and the Law. And the basis of why I'm here is
Mhm.
indeed that Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, this is not a partisan thing,
Oh,
are ignoring, as they too often do, a situation until it turns critical. They're
yes.
not updating the copyright laws, the fair use law, if you're familiar with that, trademark even, infringement potentials, because kids are just, and teachers know this, they're just going to AI whatever bot and saying, I need a paper on such and such and such, and it's spewing it out. And they're basically plagiarizing what AI gave them and calling it their own. That's plagiarism. That's a violation. Now, the terms of service of your AI service might say, yes, you can use this, but just the moral dishonesty of trying to claim it as your own, let alone the legality that hasn't been cleared up of that plagiarism, is an issue. Now, I use AI at times. They're not every word of my books are me. I wrote them. None of it is AI. I use AI at times online articles, and if I do that, I disclaim that I've used Galaxy AI. Galaxy AI created this picture. Galaxy AI created that summary of a video I did, right? I am giving proper accreditation. And that's the key word here. Because AI is what? Really a fancy search engine. It's just an aggregator of information that it is polling and pulling. Now, if AI lifts person X saying Y about Z, and you're researching subject Z and writing a paper, and the AI gives you the Y quote, but not in quotes, and
Right.
not accrediting person X, and you use it in a paper, guess what? Your name's on it. You're the one guilty of copyright violation and plagiarism unless it falls under fair use. So if you don't see YA and at least say this article in whole or in part, partially produced through Galaxy AI or Grok or Google, whatever, you're on the hook. Just like the Chrisleys were just pardoned for tax evasion. Well, your name is the one on the end of the bottom of the tax return. You hire them to help you, but you are the one on the hook.
I think there's two difficulties is one, because AI is a black box, most people don't know that. Because it's a black box and we we cannot ever retrace its steps to find out where it got what from to prove where it came from. Proving copyright is very difficult. It's why there's been no legal cases. It would fall apart in court.
Well,
Um,
I don't know that, I hope they have logs. And again, this is the law issue. Congress needs to pass a law. Any question typed into AI and the response given should be, by law, required to be recorded in a log somewhere so it can be legally not FOIA'd, because private companies aren't subject to FOIA laws unless if they update FOIA laws, but a court A lawyer could subpoena the logs that way. We don't know if that is or isn't happening.
I don't even
Again,
think most of these models even have that capability because they take in all this training data and then they put words together in the order that matches what it thinks you're doing. I don't even think that, and here's the problem. I don't even think that sort of data even exists. The one thing I do like that some of the newest models have been doing, and I know because I've been getting clicks from them, is they are now starting to like kind of cite their sources of we saw this information here and here's kind of where we got it from. And I discovered this because I was getting clicks from Perplexity. So I started to go look at how that was working and found out that in some cases AI models were citing my work because I have this huge library at CameronScholl.com.
exactly.
Check it out, read it.
They're ripping you off.
Yes,
and not giving you
I joked, Sam Altman, where should I send the bill for you stealing my entire library of work?
Right.
And when can we expect payment? That's,
I know they've lifted me too. So yeah, that's the issue.
And when can you expect payment?
Right. That's why I use the word accreditation and attribution. As you said, now, and that's part of what Congress needs to put into law. If Grok uses josephmlenard.us as a source, or the Cameron Journal as a source, we need to be accredited and attributed for it. If not, direct things put in quotes.
Yes. No, I mean, and I think this, and I think the sad part, and I'm sure this is, enraging to you as well. And this has always bothered me, and I've had a parade of AI people on the show to talk about this. The cavalier nature with which they treat this stuff. They don't care.
No,
I think
they don't.
For me, that's always been the most terrifying part, especially as someone who has 3 degrees, for whom not citing a source is a suspendable, you lose everything, get kicked out of the program offense sort of thing, and who takes this stuff very seriously. There's the casual nature with which they treat that and don't understand how important it is to be able to go read an original source if you want to, being able to, credit people for their work that's not your own, which is very important, and also how it can damage other people's careers. Because the reality is, if some college student is writing a paper and they're quoting my work on domestic terrorism, or whatever have you, that's the basis on which academia is built, is showing that it's not just you saying it, but there's a corpus of people behind you saying it. And I'm always frustrated by the AI people because none of them care about any of that stuff. For them, it's too messy. It's too hard to understand. They don't think it's important. They just look at it as data, ones and zeros.
You could see my note there, fair use, when you started saying that. I wrote that down. That's the issue here. There is fair use law. And I myself have quoted under fair use myself. But normally I CYA and I attribute and accredit where it came from and link the source. For the rest of person X's article where quote Y came from on topic Z, to use that example I did before, go to this link and see their full piece that I quoted under fair use here.
No, I mean, and like I said, I've always been very frustrated with how much AI and Silicon Valley in general, because I've had a lot of those guys on this show too, they just don't care about any of this stuff.
No, they want to treat it all as fair use availability. That's not the law. You are guilty of theft, plagiarism, copyright violation.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if you feel similarly about this, but I feel like looking at the marketplace and looking at how fast this is moving and all that's happening, I feel like they're probably going to get their wish. Like, I feel like very strongly, we're probably going to lose the whole system of copyright that we have relied upon since the founding of this country. It's probably, I mean, will we have copyright by 2040? I doubt it. I really do. I
Oh,
doubt it.
I think we'll be able to collect it because now, Christitutionalist, my podcast, I invented that word and I indeed trademarked it. So it's protected and I can cease and desist if someone's bastardizing the word of how I intended it to be, right? But without that trademark, it's just you can't copyright a word or a phrase. You can trademark a word or a phrase, and you can't copyright like a paragraph. That's fair use. But again, it should be accredited where you got it from. If you want to quote a paragraph out of Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You, you should accredit me and the book from whence you got it from. But under fair use, that would be allowed. They want to turn everything into fair use. And I don't think they'll get to go that far. Our books will stay copyrightable. You can't lift my book and claim it as your own without violating. But I agree with you. It's going to loosen and probably too much and them go too far. Because why? They've got money. They've got lobbyists. You and I don't have a lobbyist in D.C.
No, definitely not. I think also the other problem is, especially with, something like, terrorism and whatnot, an AI can have, read my work on that, which I have a degree in, and your book, and then take that information and synthesize something else out of it.
Yeah.
Never say, oh yeah, it was Joseph Lenard and Cameron kind of got this idea, all this sort of thing. And it's something, new enough sort of thing. That's where I think it's gonna get real messy and real hard to track, is to say, we, it's not, we're not directly lifting quotes, so it doesn't count. Yes, this was the training data we used, but that's that we don't need to compensate people for that. We don't need to ask their permission or
I'm not looking
like
for
that.
a direct compensation necessarily, but you're right. It should give accreditation and attribution. Grok or Galaxy used Joseph M. Lenard's Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You or an article of yours as partial source material. But you're right. How new does it have to be? What defines new enough to be its own work?
Yes, exactly. And we've had ideas of what that, means in the past. And there's a difference between, the bibliography of things you read but didn't quote, the works cited, the things that you read and did quote, all this. The academia has kind of figured these things out. And I think the most shocking thing is the AI folks do not care. Their whole point is to disrupt that entire system, to make it easier for people to do stuff. What without understanding, without the corpus of human knowledge, they would have nothing.
Right.
Social media is the same problem. If everyone stopped posting content, that social media going out of business tomorrow. Like these people are standing on the shoulders of everyone else who makes stuff, who does stuff, who writes stuff, who creates stuff. And no one, for all the billions and at this point trillions of dollars they have made, no one has ever really, I think, ever taken that into account or ever tried to, compensate anyone when Australia tried to make Facebook pay news publishers for news articles posted on Facebook. Facebook told them, by leaving Australia. That's
Canada
what they did.
Doing the same thing. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been on Rick Walker's Maverick News discussing that.
Yeah.
And the goal there in Canada and maybe in Australia, I don't know, I've not looked into it, but Canada, the point was trying to push out independent media. They want to lift up corporate state-run CBC up there.
Right.
Basically, they want to protect those who protect the politicians and crowd out other. So, and I already said, like I said, I use Galaxy AI to create images. And, if I use an image, I say, image source, Galaxy AI. Cover my own ass. What if Galaxy lifts that image from somebody somewhere?
Right.
If I don't say that's where it came from, they're the real source, I'm on the hook for that. I also use, I'm on Deepcast FM. They also run podsite.fm. My Christitutionalist Politics has carried both those places. And they use an AI also. So for show summaries and things like that, they're summarizing our material. We're telling them, please summarize my material. That's not the issue. You and I are talking about when someone asks Galaxy to create something out of whole cloth, again, about topic Z, and it pulls from person X a quote of Y and not accrediting it. And I agree with you. The law has got to be updated. They've got to start saying what some of the source material is in there, at least a partial acknowledgement of an accreditation and an attribution. Not necessarily force them to pay me a couple pennies because they used me as source material, but at least let people know, hey, wow, this guy has this book and Grok used it. Maybe I want to buy that book.
Yeah. So when did you start wanting to put yourself out to shows talking about this?
Well, again, being a former IT guy, and then I started with co-hosting Savaged Unfiltered. It's come up there a few times. And again, you in part were on talking about it and that. Also, I've written articles on it, of course, being a former IT guy. I saw this shit coming a long time ago. People are just now trying to wrap, as do you, right? We've seen it coming. Miles away, we've seen it coming. But again, Congress, Democrats and Republicans, refuse to deal with anything till it becomes a fucking crisis.
And kind of circling back to, the top of the show, and I was kind of level setting, like, here's kind of what happened this morning. Weird that we're having this conversation today. I think we're starting to get to a crisis point with this. I mean, if we even pull out from the whole copyright situation and look at it, the crisis is really here. I mean, when you have, major layoffs coming along, because AI can do it better, cheaper, faster, all this type of thing, that's where you start getting into worrying about societal upheaval.
Right. I need a program to write a report based on data coming from this, and this is the field. This is the main data I want to mine from my computer system. Well, an AI program can write that code like that in the snap of a finger. Whereas what, you're going to hire a guy and spend 6 months to do it instead? That's the warning you have here. That contractor's not going to get the job to write that program because AI can write it for the company that much quicker.
And the thing that I kind of laugh when, everyone's like, well, how do we, manage the economic, fallout from people not having jobs? And I said, I'm not quite sure you understand how business economies work. If there are no customers, there will be no economy. End of story. Like, if the company, they will have companies will have no one to sell to because no one will have any money.
If no one has a job, if people don't have a job to earn some money. I'm sorry, you communists out there, but you cannot have an economy based on the government doling out a $50K check to everybody in the nation, creating this fiat currency out of nowhere based on nothing for people doing nothing to create a phony, fake, propped up economy. It doesn't work. Ask the Weimar Republic. Ask the Venezuelans.
No, I mean, that's for me, that conversation is very short. there will be no customers, therefore businesses will go under, therefore we will not have an economy. For me, that conversation is very, very short. And everyone's talking about all these different things and, oh, we're going to have UBI and we'll have to find ways to give people purpose. And I'm kind of like, no, 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 no. There will be no one to pay the taxes to fund any of this. I mean,
Correct.
because you're looking at okay, you have all these and I'm a big tax the corporations person, which I is fine. But it's like, here's the problem: if they have no customers to sell to, they will generate no revenue and will have nothing to tax. So even as a tax the rich person, I can see that. So for me, this conversation is very short of if we're not, and this is something I've always been very passionate about. We have for a long time not had an economy built for people. Thank you, Jack Welch and Lee Iacocca, who decided we should build everything for shareholders. And you're in Michigan at the scene of the crime. And so, and that we've had that for almost 50 years now. Then on the next kind of layer of that is one of the terrible things that did is it sucked billions of dollars out of the middle class and hauled out the center of this country. And we know what that looks like. Now imagine what's gone on in the upper Midwest from coast to coast, everywhere. Because what we know is in communities, when you lose 10 jobs, 50 jobs, 100 jobs, that's thousands of dollars that aren't being spent around town. Even if it's in corporate places, isn't being spent around town. Businesses close, new businesses don't open, or ones that do can't make it because there's no revenue. When money's only usable in so much as you can trade it for other goods and services. Yeah. So when dollars stop moving, which is one of the problems our economy has now, the wealth hoard too much wealth. When dollars don't move, you don't have a marketplace, you don't have an economy, no one has customers, the system collapses.
You're explaining free market capitalism, gross domestic product, the circulation of money in a merit transaction system. I make money and I choose who I want to buy things from. That is free market capitalism, and I'm for that. Gross domestic product goes away, and as you're saying, there is nothing to tax if no one is earning money legitimately for trading my services for your need to get something done in your company. Therefore, then I have money, part of the GDP, to be taxed and to buy something from Best Buy, which is also then sales taxed.
Right. So which means, and then you get into very basic things of you have no roads, you have no sewers, you have no schools, you have no police, you have no fire people.
We're a shithole third world nation. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it just bubbles up from the bottom and just gets worse and worse and worse the higher up the levels that you go. And I think the only thing I found compelling about what's kind of coming down the pike with AI is this idea that, technology tends to be very deflationary. That's part of the reason why the 90s were so good economically is the personal computer was very deflationary. I do feel like AI could lead to a place where, especially in developed nations, it's so deflationary that life becomes incredibly cheap and we can get away with maybe working 10 or 20 hours a week and not necessarily making much money, but living good lives. Is it going to make for great GDP numbers? Definitely not. Is it a potential Band-Aid on all of this? Yeah, because at least you still have not many dollars, but $1 or $2 moving for very inexpensive but high quality goods and services delivered by AI and robots and all this type of thing. Sure, I could see that. But to your point, here's what's frightening. There's no one in Washington who's even talking about this.
No.
And no one's saying, we need to start a 10-year transition, and it will take a decade-long transition where every year we're slowly reducing working hours as this technology increases, all this sort of thing. No one's having that conversation. And what then happens is you have the trauma of people merely being thrown out on their ear. And you see this, especially when there's not a decent transition for it. You see this especially in high-end manufacturing, like automobile manufacturing. You look at the modern videos and you have truck frames moving through a factory and there's 5 people behind glass in booth watching the robots do everything. And then even the guy in the paint booth, he's the old fashioned. They used to wear big yellow suits and spray with a gun. Now it's a guy who pushes buttons and the machine on a rack does the whole thing. And so you build a car with a handful of people, so much fewer people. And the reality is there was never a transition for the automotive industry. And so you have a lot of devastation from that, as I don't need to tell you, you live in it. And
right.
The same
part of this is unions partially pricing workers out of jobs so that the companies want to automate more. So both labor and corporation are in part to blame, but to your deflationary, I could make do with less money if everything costs half as much.
Right.
To your point, right? We're talking cost to benefit. We're talking ROI. We're talking the overall GDP. And indeed, if prices came down, we could make do with less. But it's a very dangerous, delicate balance. We're asking then. Well, I can get by with less if everything costs less. But if everything costs only pennies and there's no jobs for me to even make the pennies to buy it, right? These are complex issues.
Yes, and therein lies the problem of, okay, we might reduce working hours, but the vast majority of people are still going to require some form of income stream, usually through employment, all this sort of thing.
And it can't be government fiat money paying you money that doesn't really exist.
And the problem, and it was funny, I had a very nice young man named Stephen Fair on the show last year, and he and I have gotten into a business partnership and all this sort of thing. And I kind of laughed when he said, we're going to see the end of employment by the end of this decade. And when he came on the show last year and said that, I laughed and I said, that's adorable. Sort of thing. But now fast forward a year, and all of a sudden his little prediction seems prescient. And so it's a very, it's a very frightening thing.
I was going to say the robots aren't going to serve us food. Well, actually, Elon's robots can be waiters and waitresses and take our orders and cook our food and serve it to us.
No, they have. China already has very advanced things where one chef can run the whole restaurant. Yes, I mean it's getting to a place where between automation, AI and blue collar, humanoid robots that are already working in warehouses, picking alongside the people, all this type of thing.
That's why when I go into McDonald's, I won't use that kiosk. No, I'm walking to a counter. I want to talk to a person. I want an employee to put in my order, to see their face, get their reaction, know they understand what I'm asking for, and will get it right. And they stay employed. I stay happier.
No, and this is the great, yes, absolutely. But I think this is the great debate is, how, as we've found with so many other technological changes in the past, how long will people hang on to it before it becomes what everybody does, it becomes too convenient, all this sort of thing, and then you start to lose that ground in that progress.
Well,
I think we're in a very scary place.
Amazon whole model right there, right? I myself get mad at myself for the amount of things I order on Amazon because it'll show up at my door in 2 days rather than go to the mom and pop shop I used to go to buy that, right? It's become too darn convenient.
No, and that's, my great fear is that we're going to have a lot of accelerationism in the adoption of this because it'll be cheap, it'll be easy, it'll be convenient, and that nothing gets this country moving faster than cheap, easy, and convenient, and then we're gonna really start to be in a very frightening and scary place. And I'm not a big social upheaval person, but I've read a history book enough to know that this is what causes a lot of social upheaval.
Yeah. What was the Will Smith movie? I Robot. Do you remember the Will? Right? Everybody's got their own personal robot. And there was another Bruce Willis, Surrogates, where people aren't even themselves. And like Wall-E, right? We all went into space and We got lazier and lazier over time because nobody's doing anything, right? Surrogates, the movie, it's a good movie. I love it. I recommend it. But indeed, you don't even you send out your robot, you're operating them or they're operating as you. They come, people aren't even out. So it's a social commentary again, just like social media. People are literally then putting on fake faces and bodies out in public to interact with other fake people hiding behind a keyboard in their house.
Instagram and a tweet.
All right,
Joseph.
As an IT guy, I was on all those social media platforms as they first came out, and when Twitter, as I call it twatter, I call it the twatter attention span. Look what right? No, I don't want details matter. I write articles that have facts in them. So you understand, I understand what a thesis is and can write one. Most people don't even know what it is or can't spell thesis, but they want give me the fake headline. Give me the fake TikTok summary. No, details matter.
They do. No, I mean, I wish, believe me, as someone who writes, especially on very complicated things like, trade wars and geopolitics and all this type of thing, I definitely miss people engaging with material at a deep level. And as much as I love the views, I get annoyed that a 36-second YouTube short will always do better than the minute-long thing. And that will even be true of this. This will get split into clips by AI. And I guarantee you, the 35-second version will always get far more views.
Taken out of context and distorted to present us not say, or we will have said the words, but that's not what we meant because you're distorting the context. And indeed, that's the twatter attention span world.
No, and it's sad because every video has, the related video to go watch the long form sort of thing. And I cannot tell you how much time I've spent in the comments with people being angry and my saying, to be fair, this clip is out of its full content and you need to go watch the whole thing because here's what we said and here's what we were talking about, all this type of thing. And I've had to kind of calm people down in the comment section.
They'll get angry at you for correcting them.
Yes. And we kind of go watch the whole video. It's only 45 minutes. You should really go check it out and find out what we were talking about sort of thing. And it's, it is, yes. And that living in that space is very difficult and people don't engage the same way they used to. And that is always 110%.
What does that portend for books too? No one goes to a library anymore. Pretty soon books that, thousands of new authors every month, but pretty soon it's going to dwindle to your J.K. Rowling's, your Stephen King's, your only big Pattersons and clients, well-known people. People aren't going to read books unless they're from the big name. Those are going to be the only ones published.
And the sad thing is, I was reading this the other day, like we're already getting into, the word post-literate society has started to be used. And
I see a lot of those people on the street.
Yes, I mean, and the whole conversation, and as someone whose life and passion has been spent on words and books and book publishing, all this type of thing, what does it mean to be passionate about literature in a post-literate society? And that's a whole conversation going on in my field right now. Of it makes one feel very anachronistic sort of thing. And it's hard to get people to, sit down and, and pay attention for that long or to invest the time.
Or they don't know who Locke is.
No.
Right? If it not for the series Lost,
yes,
that name would have been forgotten. And they don't know, the French guy I was going de Tocqueville, or they certainly don't know Rand or
No, nothing of a Rousseau or Voltaire or
Orwell,
yes,
even. If not for the Mac commercial, they wouldn't know 1984, the book, and
And
Orwell
and
existed.
the sad thing is people's acceptance of an AI summary of it as an acceptable consumption is just kind of hurts my heart. But
Right. Orwell for dummies, right? The Cliff Notes. Yeah. Oh, please do yourself a favor if you're falling into, right? We're not calling everybody illiterate, but unfortunately, with the Twitter attention span, we're all getting more and more lazy. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and catch ourselves and say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I'm becoming one of them. I can't let that happen. Self-reflection is important here.
it is, it is. So we're at time. I gotta go because I keep things a little bit shorter than you guys do over at Savage Overload. So so why don't you tell us where we can find you online on social media and we'll get you out of here.
Well, you can see above my head, terrorstrikes.info, josephmlenard.us. Again, it looks like Lenard. It's not French. It's Leonard without an O. Joseph M. Lenard, because there is a Joseph Lenard out of South Carolina. I don't want you paying attention to any of his
We
stuff.
don't know him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And of course, Christitutionalist Politics, carried virtually everywhere podcasts are covered. So
well, thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. And again, I might not have even thought twice about coming on, but having been with you through Savage Unfiltered before, I thought, oh, I know that guy. I want to be on his show.
Good. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you so much. That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter. And we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.